Scientists and sea biologists say that the mass of squids on the planet exceeds the mass of all people. Keep this fact in your mind while you listen to the story of the Kraken. So no one knows exactly what this giant sea monster looks like. But according to the stories of old fishers and taverns, the records of travelers and legends, the Kraken looks like a giant squid. If so, it has the squid's anatomical properties and reproductive functions. And this is a big problem for us. A female squid can lay anywhere from 3 to 100,000 eggs. Even if most of them don't survive, it's still a lot. Many of these creatures live in the ocean's dark depths that people haven't yet fully explored, and it seems we'll know more about squids soon. The metabolism of these creatures is accelerating thanks to the increase in water temperature, and this causes population growth. Scientists call squids the weeds of the seas because of their rapid reproduction. They can potentially exceed the population of all fish and mammals. Perhaps there will be so many of them soon that they won't have enough food on the ocean floor. They will begin to migrate closer to the surface, small squid and monstrous giant ones. There may be a Kraken among them, or a few, or even tens, hundreds of thousands. And if this happens, humanity and all animals on Earth will face a huge problem. As the kings of nature, people can easily invent poison to destroy Krakens. But how to spread this poison? Giant squids, along with ordinary fish, dolphins, whales, seaweed, and phytoplankton, will suffer if it gets into the water. More than half of the world's oxygen is produced by the ocean. And if people spread this poison in the water, they'll risk disrupting the entire planet's ecosystem. The ocean will become lifeless. So, people have to forget about poisoning the water. For a while, we will be helpless against the squid apocalypse. Let's say a couple of billion squids rise to the surface. A couple million of them are Krakens. The first thing these monsters will want to do is get food. Lunch for them can be both shoals of fish and massive whales, and no one can stop them. Even if Megalodons existed, they wouldn't be able to resist the giant tentacles and strong beaks of Krakens. The fish population in the ocean has declined. This means that people can't go fishing anymore. We can catch fish in lakes, rivers, and seas, but it's not enough. Seafood has become very expensive all over the world. A fish tank with goldfish is a luxury. Of course, humans learn to catch giant squids, which solves the problem of hunger in some areas. The profession of a squid catcher is becoming prestigious all over the world. This kind of fishing is dangerous and requires a lot of strength and courage. The second problem is sea travel. Every day, people transport millions of tons of cargo across the ocean. Huge businesses and economies of entire countries work thanks to such transportation. But now, Krakens swim close to the surface and make any voyage dangerous. One monster can quickly destroy a small ship. 10 or 20 Krakens are able to sink a giant cargo vessel. This leads to a reduction in logistics chains. Communication between continents is now maintained by air. The number of flights is increasing. Plane tickets are rising in price. Travel is becoming too expensive. This leads to a reduction in the number of tourists in some countries, which disrupts their economies. There are more Krakens and less food. Resting on a beach also becomes dangerous. Aggressive, hungry giant squids can come ashore to catch sunbathers. All shores are fenced. Swimming is forbidden. Of course, scientists invent some things to fight squids. Sound barriers, for example. Every ship is now equipped with a device that launches powerful ultrasonic waves into the water. They scare away all the fish and clear the way for boats. In the beginning, it helps, but then Krakens stop fearing it. Ultrasound only angers them. They pounce on ships and break sound barriers. Another thing that scares them away is sunlight. For millions of years, Krakens have been living on the dark ocean floor. Their eyes are used to the darkness, so they fear the bright light. During sunny weather, ships move freely. But as soon as the sun goes below the horizon or clouds obscure it, sea monsters come out of the ocean depths. It doesn't help much because it's impossible to sail across any ocean within a single sunny day. In addition, there is no guarantee that you won't get caught in a storm when the sun is hidden behind the clouds. That's why people invent powerful floodlights. They direct their beams at monsters' heads and drive them into the dark depths. Such projectors are expensive because they require a lot of energy. Only some ships can afford such a device. And while people seek more effective ways to fight Krakens, squids multiply, and this becomes the solution to the problem. The ocean is running out of fish. Food is not available on land. Like a snake devouring its tail, squids start fighting with one another. The water foams, and squids cling to each other with tentacles. Big krakens defeat smaller monsters. Their population is shrinking. A few giant squids the size of the Eiffel Tower survive after long battles. And when the fight is over, little squids come into play. Billions of cephalopods pounce on giant krakens. They are like flies clinging from all sides. Giant monsters can't fight them. Great, the problem with voyages is solved. Large ships can set sail, but it's still dangerous for people to swim in the sea since tiny monsters are still hungry. Logistics chains have been restored, but fish are still scarce in the ocean. Squids, like parasites, don't allow other creatures to dominate, and here, scientists come to help fish. Let's go back to our reality for a second. There's such a thing as a gene drive. It's a substance that changes the genetic code of living creatures. For example, scientists have implemented a gene drive in mosquitoes that cause malaria. Biologists changed the genome of these insects, so some female mosquitoes became infertile. Then these females spread the gene throughout the mosquito colony. As a result, more insects that couldn't conceive appeared. They continued to spread the gene, and this went on until the population reduced significantly. A gene drive is a low-cost way to get rid of invasive species of insects or rodents. Thus, scientists can control the population of entire species. But such actions can be dangerous. If some animal disappears, it can disrupt the whole ecosystem and lead to the disappearance of other animals. In the case of mosquitoes, nature didn't suffer much. So scientists use a gene drive against squid. But why couldn't they do it from the very beginning? Ordinary squids didn't pose a threat, and their average life expectancy is from 3 to 5 years. If scientists had launched a gene drive, then in 7 years all small squids would have disappeared. But it wouldn't have worked with krakens. According to myths and legends, one such monster can live for several hundred years. Now, when small squids have solved the problem with large ones, a gene drive comes into play. It takes several years to get rid of the squid. The ocean ecosystem begins to recover. People take fish and marine mammals from seas and rivers and transfer them to the ocean. The population of whales, sharks, octopuses, salmon, and hundreds of thousands of other species is growing. But then another threat awakens in the depths of the ocean. It turns out that when squids and krakens lived on the ocean floor, they didn't let even more terrible monsters move to the surface. Now that all arthropods have disappeared, new monsters are breaking free. First, marine earthquakes begin. But then, scientists discover that it's not the seabed shaking. Those are the backs of giant crabs. Hundreds of thousands of armored monsters with claws are rising to the surface. And this time, they can come ashore.
The Kraken is a colossal squid, a legendary sea monster, the biggest hunk of calamari you ever saw. And if this monster had existed, the world would have changed beyond recognition. The Kraken has powerful tentacles, solid muscles with suckers at the end. They're just impossible to escape. The Kraken can break a ship in half or just pull it down into the depths. But the worst thing about the Kraken is its size. According to old sailor stories, the Kraken reached 5,000 feet in length. That's almost 10 soccer fields. Hey, maybe the Kraken could play soccer. The Kraken legend said the monster was so giant that sailors mistook it for a small island. In past centuries, it would have been impossible to defeat such a beast. If the Kraken existed in reality, it might have had offspring. Yeah, in all the world's oceans, there would be giant monsters that could sink any ship. It's unlikely that the Kraken would have competitors in its habitat, so its population would grow strongly. Since the Kraken is enormous, it would need lots of food, so the population of other large sea animals would fall significantly. Blue whales, great white sharks, other giant squids, all the big sea creatures would be endangered. Many people are starving because of the reduction of large fish in the ocean. Urban economies that rely on fishing will be in decline. Prices for small fish around the world are getting more expensive because it's unsafe to fish. To defeat the Kraken, you need powerful weapons, but the monster is tough to catch. The Kraken belongs to the cephalopod genus. This species includes squid and octopus, some of the most intelligent creatures on the planet. The Kraken is a skilled hunter and will never fight in the open. So, what can you do? You can't track the Kraken because it approaches from the depths, not the surface. Though you may be able to tell that the monster is somewhere nearby if a lot of fish surface. When the Kraken swims, it scares all the fish in the vicinity. But it might already be too late. A huge tentacle emerges from the water, resembling a high tower. This tower falls on the deck of the ship, shattering it. The sailors scream and run. The Kraken lands a second blow, and the vessel is almost capsized. Next, the Kraken wraps its giant tentacles around the ship and pulls it to the bottom. Oh boy! What if the sailors managed to detach the ship from the tentacles of this monster? With the help of powerful weapons, the ship's crew strikes back. The Kraken retreats under the water. It's hurt, angry. It seems the battle is over, but here comes the worst. A whirlpool forms beside the ship. Thanks to its considerable weight, when the Kraken dives, it creates a whirlpool behind it. Like a drain in a giant bathtub, this whirlpool sucks the ship down. The battle with the Kraken is lost. Well, that was unfortunate. You might be able to defeat the monster if you can anticipate its attack in advance. But the Kraken can see you and your ship before you can see it. Colossal squids live in deep waters, and they have the largest eyes among all animals. The squid's eye is the size of a dinner plate. Thanks to this, they can see their prey from far away. Similarly, a Kraken would spot the ship much sooner than sonar could pick up the Kraken. It would always have the drop on you. Well, that's not good. Around the world, cargo transportation by ship is declining. Airlines provide the only safe connection between the continents. This will increase air pollution. The most successful enemy of the Kraken is submarines. They travel at great depths and are equipped with powerful echolocators to help detect the Kraken in advance. Subs are well armed too, and the round metal body is not so easy to destroy. A single Kraken may be defeated by a submarine, but what if there are several sea monsters? 3 Kraken can wrap their tentacles around the submarine and drag it deeper into the water where the pressure will destroy their enemy. In other words, they'll have a crush on you. The existence of the Kraken will have dramatically changed the development of many countries. What if Christopher Columbus, on his famous journey, noticed an island that he thought was the New World? He approaches it, but tentacles emerge from the island and sink Columbus's ship. The colonization of North America is delayed, maybe until airplanes are invented, and the first crewed flight wasn't until the 20th century. There would be no Hollywood. There would be no hamburgers, no famous American music playing. There wouldn't be YouTube, which means you wouldn't be watching this video right now. Worst of all, the internet wouldn't exist either. And all this because of one stupid monster squid. The Vikings wouldn't sail on their long ships to raid and settle foreign territories. The history of Norway, Sweden, Finland, and other Nordic countries would have changed drastically. Hey, maybe the Titanic wouldn't have hit an iceberg, but a giant sea monster instead. Though, it's unlikely that people would take trips on huge ocean liners in a world where the Kraken exists. Maybe though, the Kraken isn't all that aggressive. Still, they need a lot of food, and because of the growing population of these monsters, there will be much less food in the ocean. Therefore, the Kraken will increasingly come to the surface for hunting. In the future, the Kraken will migrate closer to the shore. In many countries, people then are not allowed to swim in the ocean. Imagine floating on the waves and a monster the size of a skyscraper is swimming right below you. Relaxing at sea and on the beach will no longer be popular. Many countries that live off tourism become impoverished. When the Krakens grow hungrier, they try to capture prey from land. A huge squid could attack small port cities. Houses, docks, streets, everything can be crushed. A tremendous amount of plastic is thrown into the ocean near the coasts of large countries. Billions of tons of plastic will bother the Kraken. An angry, hungry monster can attack bridges like the Golden Gate Bridge. Imagine that a huge squid surrounds the bridge and blocks all traffic. Some of these squids could break the strong cables with their power, and the entire structure would collapse into the water. Ooh! It's good that the Kraken doesn't really exist to swim in our seas and oceans, at least as far as we know. But could the monster have actually existed? Legends stretch back years, but scientific evidence appeared in the middle of the 19th century. In 1857, a 3-inch diameter squid beak was discovered on the coast of Denmark. Other huge squid remains were found in the Bahamas, and then scientists were convinced that gigantic squids existed. While colossal squid has been officially discovered since then, it's been more than 100 years, and we still don't know what max size they can grow to. The fact is, colossal squids are one of the most elusive creatures on Earth. They live in the depths of the ocean where it's challenging for scientists to reach. Any dive to a greater depth requires powerful, bulky equipment. Underwater bath escapes and cameras make a lot of noise and light, which squids notice from afar. They flee before we can see them. The legend of the Kraken probably appeared because of a real colossal squid. People in the past didn't know about these creatures' existence, so when they saw one for the first time, they described it as a massive, terrible monster. It's difficult to say if these huge squids were the size of a small island, because the truth is, we've only studied about 5% of the ocean. It may be that in its depths, monsters much more terrible than the Kraken swim. Like my nephew, Peter. It was just a couple of hours before midnight. Some of the 2,200 passengers of a large, luxurious ocean liner were still partying in the beautiful first-class lounges. The rest were asleep in their beds, some of them in spacious cabins filled with paintings and decorated with ornate carvings, others in tiny rooms below sea level. All of these people had only one thing in common. On that chilly April night, all of them were heading from Southampton in England to New York City. The ship was called the Titanic, and at that time, it was considered unsinkable. At the very beginning of the journey, the liner nearly collided with the steamship New York. Luckily, the Titanic managed to pass by the other vessel with several feet to spare. A common sigh of relief escaped the passengers crowding the liner's decks. Little did they know what was awaiting them in the near future. Several days later, when the ship was already in the North Atlantic Ocean, 370 miles away from Newfoundland, the unthinkable happened. At about 11:40 p.m. on April 14th, those who were still awake were knocked over by some mysterious and powerful force. Passengers who were already in their beds got catapulted to the floor. Screams and total confusion. Months before the disaster struck, a ginormous chunk of ice had broken away from a glacier in southwest Greenland. It was made of the snow that had fallen about 100,000 years ago, when mammoths were still roaming the planet. When the iceberg just started its journey, it was a huge thing, almost 1,700 feet long. It also weighed 75 million tons. But then it floated much further to the south than normal, right into the area the Titanic had to cross on its way to North America. Even after melting into the water for months, the iceberg still weighed an impressive 1.5 million tons. Its top part was towering over the water for almost 100 feet. Even so, it looked harmless next to the massive ocean liner, but only at first glance. What people saw was just a tiny part of a jumbo piece of ice. The largest part of any iceberg is hidden under the surface, with a mere 1/10 visible above the water. The Titanic iceberg wasn't an exception. The moment the ship collided with it, the vessel was doomed. Unable to divert its course, it crashed into the ice, rupturing at least 5 of its hull compartments. They immediately started to fill with water, which then flooded each succeeding compartment. The front of the ship started to sink. This raised the back part almost vertically into the air, and then, with a deafening roar, the liner broke in half. The rest is history. But what if what we know about the disaster is not true? What if the ship hadn't been wrecked by an iceberg? What if it had been something more treacherous and way more alive that sank the Titanic? Far, far beneath the surface, in the ocean's dim, dark depths, a shadow lurks. Imagine an enormous creature, round, flat, and full of arms, or rather, powerful tentacles. It resembles a giant squid or octopus, but much, much bigger. Its descriptions go from as long as 10 ships to 1.5 miles long. Rumor has it unlucky sailors sometimes mistake the sea monster for an island, but instead of stepping on dry land, They're dragged down into the ocean. These people meet the Kraken, a legendary creature feared by everyone who sets off on a sea voyage. Usually, the Kraken haunts the seas off the coast of Norway through Iceland and all the way to Greenland. Who knows what has brought the beast further away from home? The waters of the North Atlantic are just as chilly, and the creature feels good and curious. Once it notices the Titanic, the ship has no chances to escape its attention. It's dark. That's why those on the ocean liner don't notice the first alarm bells. The water around the ship starts to bubble. If you strain your ears, you can hear bizarre gurgling sounds. If you strain your eyes, you can see thousands of fish and jellyfish rising to the surface. They feel something's up down below. But even if someone on the Titanic noticed this hectic activity, they wouldn't have time to get out of the way of the horrifying beast. Its enormous size and super long and strong tentacles turn it into a predator you can't escape. A 9-year-old boy standing on the deck knows nothing about the sea monster. He's just watching countless small islands rising out of the sea, very, very slowly. The kid doesn't understand why, but all the blood in his body suddenly runs cold. Hundreds of tiny fish are leaping about in the pools between these sandbanks, but soon they roll off into the water over the sides of the ginormous something. Several sharp points appear above the surface. The intrigued boy thinks they look like horns. They keep growing thicker and thicker the higher they rise. Soon they're towering over the massive Titanic, dwarfing the ship. These horns are the Kraken's dreaded arms. The boy is paralyzed by fear, but then he spots the monster's eye. It's as big as an elephant. It makes the kid come to his senses and dash away, screaming like there's no tomorrow. The boy's shouting attracts people. They gather along the ship's side, trying to spot what scared the child so much. And then they see. First one, then more and more passengers and crew members lean over the railing to get a better look. They aren't being careless, they're just in shock. Indeed, it's hard to believe your eyes when they tell you a dreaded beast is about to attack the ship you're on. Plus, it's dark, and no one can see clearly what that huge shadow is. But the next several minutes prove it's not a mirage. All of a sudden, the creature rises one of its monstrous arms and stretches it toward the vessel. It might very well be longer than the liner's entire hull. Women start screaming and fainting. Men seem to be just as terrified. Those who have managed to keep their heads clear sweep up kids and run for shelter. That's when the first powerful hit shakes the vessel. The Kraken's had enough waiting. It's ready for action. Panic engulfs people on board the Titanic. Running around aimlessly and screaming, they create chaos that makes the beast even more interested. Normally, the monster just wants to be left alone. It rests deep down on the ocean floor, using its long tentacles to tether itself to the bottom and lazily hunt for food. It only rises to the surface when the weather's unusually warm, or when it gets disturbed. The Titanic is probably too massive and loud. It draws the creature out of its slumber. When the beast gets to the surface and sees a large, glistening boat, wow, the thing mesmerizes the creature. It holds out one of its tentacles to touch the unusual construction. The material is hard, and the beast wonders if the thing will break when squeezed. Without wasting much time, it wraps several arms around the ship and tries to squish it. Tiny creatures fussing around, falling overboard, and making annoying high-pitched noises start to irritate the Kraken. It's getting angry. Easing its grip, the monster circles the Titanic several times, getting ready for the next attack. This time, the strike is much stronger. It bends the metal and makes it brittle. One more movement of a deft tentacle, and the ship starts to fill with water. The Kraken retreats, as if to enjoy the results of its efforts. But then, it notices the ship trying to speed up in futile attempts to put some distance between itself and the monster. People on board the Titanic heave a sigh of relief. The beast is nowhere in sight. Little do they know that the Kraken never lets its toys get away. The ship is beginning to slow down. Its rear part is slowly lifting up, and the front is going down underwater. Passengers and crew members are falling over onto the decks. Most of them are too scared to make a sound. That's why everything's happening in almost complete eerie silence. Until the ship breaks into two parts under its own weight. The crash is so powerful that it scares away even the Kraken. Spooked, the beast dives back into the ocean, which creates a massive boiling whirlpool in that spot. The suction is dragging what's left of the Titanic to the depths of the ocean. The most tragic thing here, though, the Kraken isn't even interested in people on board the ship. This creature is content to munch on fish. It doesn't need bigger prey. It's the animal's curiosity that's now pulling the huge ship down to the bottom. Does the majestic liner have any hope? I think you know the answer.
Once upon a time, in the deep blue sea, there was a giant monster called the Kraken. People believed it lived in the waters near Norway and Greenland. The first time anyone wrote about the Kraken was a long, long time ago. It was a man named Erik Pontoppidan from Denmark in a book called The Natural History of Norway. He wrote that the Kraken looked like a huge octopus or cuttlefish, and it could pull ships down to the bottom of the ocean. Later on, people started to imagine the Kraken as a giant squid. Even today, the story of the Kraken is still very popular, and it can be found in books, movies, or games. The stories surrounding the Kraken might sound like nothing more than local folklore or myths, but in 2004, the first giant squid was photographed. This amazing discovery was made by a team of Japanese scientists who had been working for years to capture a live giant squid on camera. They used a baited line with a camera attached to it to lure the giant squid to the surface. They also used a special lure that mimicked the light patterns of a small creature to attract the giant squid. After several days of waiting, the team finally got lucky. The image showed the giant creature's long tentacles and large eyes, as well as its distinctive body shape. It didn't stop there, though. In 2012, another team of scientists, this time from National Geographic, filmed a live giant squid for the first time in its natural habitat. This footage gave the world a much better understanding of the giant squid and its behavior. You've surely heard about this next myth too. It was said to be the most beautiful and wealthy city to ever exist. Its entrance was decorated with marble statues. The architecture of this city was sturdy and imposing. The depictions of Greek deities beautifully painted could be seen almost everywhere. The city has been the subject of debate for historians and fiction writers alike. We still have very little information on the location of the ancient city of Atlantis. That is, if it even existed. Since it was supposedly swallowed by the sea in its entirety, it's no wonder some curious minds linked it to other mysterious locations on Earth, even to the Bermuda Triangle. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. It's not yet confirmed that Atlantis truly existed. The idea of an island sinking into the sea due to an unknown disaster is a widespread idea in mythology and popular culture. However, it is possible that the story of Atlantis was inspired by actual events, such as the sinking of islands like Helike. On this island, located in the Gulf of Corinth, there was a thriving ancient Greek city. It was known for its prosperity and wealth, and it was also an important spiritual headquarters for the Greeks. The city was home to a building dedicated to the immortal Poseidon, and it was believed that he protected the city himself. However, one fateful night in 373 BCE, a massive earthquake struck the region. The ground shook violently, and the city was swallowed up by the sea in a matter of minutes. The residents of Helike, unable to escape the disaster, all disappeared under the waves. The sinking of Helike was a great tragedy for the ancient Greeks, and it was seen as a punishment from the higher spirits. Many believed that the city's prosperity and pride had angered them, and they had punished the city by destroying it. The city remained underwater for centuries, and it was not until the 20th century that it was rediscovered by modern archaeologists. Today, the most part of the city is still underwater. While we're on the subject of Greek myths, we have to talk about the famous city of Troy. This was a legendary city in ancient Greece. Scientists believed for years that it had been made up by writers and philosophers. According to an ancient Greek legend, the city was founded by the Trojan prince Paris. who stole Helen, the wife of King Menelaus of Sparta, and brought her back to Troy. This event sparked a huge conflict between the Greeks and the Trojans that lasted for 10 years. One of the most famous stories from the Trojan conflict is the tale of the Trojan horse, a large wooden horse that the Greeks built and left outside the city gates as a gift to the Trojans. The Trojans, believing the horse to be a symbol of peace, brought it into the city. But inside the horse, there were Greek fighters who, once inside the city, opened the gates and let the rest of the Greeks in. The Trojans had no escape this time, and they were ultimately defeated. The city was rediscovered in the 19th century in modern-day Turkey. It's located near the Scamander River. Today, this region is an archaeological site and draws a lot of tourists each year. The following myth is indeed sad, but it might have some truth to it too. It is said that years ago, the Solomon Islands in the Pacific Ocean, there lived a man that was deeply in love with his wife. The woman, however, decided to leave him for another man and moved to the nearby island of Tiona Manu. Heartbroken and filled with rage, the man sought out a curse to take his revenge. He set out on a journey in a canoe, determined to bring destruction to the island where his wife had fled. Upon arriving at Tiona Manu, the man planted 2 taro plants. One he kept for himself. According to the instructions, once his own plant began to sprout, disaster was supposed to strike the island. And it did. The man watched from a mountaintop as a series of waves smashed into the island, causing it to sink beneath the waves. Tiona Manu was a real place, but it's not entirely clear when it disappeared. It is said that waves alone could not have washed away this small but tall volcanic island. But an undersea earthquake could have probably done it. The island was balanced on the edge of an unstable underwater slope. The most reasonable explanation is that a huge earthquake shook the region, which made the weak foundation collapse and caused the island to sink beneath the waves. This island-sized landslide would have pushed a lot of water out of the way, which would have created a series of massive mega tsunamis. So, although those vengeful waves could have occurred, they were most likely the result of another event. And that sad man, with his curse fulfilled, returned to the Solomon Islands with his heart still heavy after the loss of his wife. We won't leave the ocean waves just yet, but we're heading over to Hawaii. A legend has it that once upon a time, there was a Hawaiian higher spirit named Pele. She was the protector of volcanic fire and was said to have arrived at the islands to flee from her older sister. To conceal herself, Pele hid in various hideaways on each of the islands until she finally concealed herself in a pit at Kilauea. This is why, according to the legend, Kilauea is known as Hawaii's active volcanic center today. The story may be visually stunning, but in reality, volcanism is caused by the superheated mantle that triggers a lot of melting beneath the surface of our planet. People also say that Pele's tears and hair can be found scattered around the volcano. However, reality has more to do with physics than with folklore. When lava cools rapidly, particularly when it gets quenched in water or a small amount of it flies through the air, it turns into volcanic glass. When it stretches and cools down, it can sometimes form tear-shaped droplets, or it can get stretched so thin that it begins to look like strands of hair. We know today that Hawaii is a volcanic region known for its fire mountains, with huge streams of lava shooting up from active vents. It's no wonder it became an ideal origin place for the story of 2 sisters and their sibling rivalry.
Some people are still afraid of sailing through this region because more than 50 ships and 20 planes have disappeared here since the mid-19th century. You won't find this place on a regular paper map, as it's not an official region of the Atlantic Ocean. It's just an imaginary area of water in the shape of a triangle near the southeastern coast of the US. Right now, we're going there to debunk all the myths and fairy tales about this place. The most popular theory says that the ancient city of Atlantis was once located where the Bermuda Triangle is now. It was inhabited by a more advanced civilization than the rest of the people on Earth. In this area, some mysterious crystals were installed that generated infinite energy and powered the entire city. Then the city sank, and its ruins still lie on the bottom of the Atlantic. But among its ruins, there are still places where crystals work. They're the reason for most disappearances. Crystals randomly release beams of energy towards the surface and disable the electronics of planes and ships. There are no facts to support this theory. Someone once wrote this legend in a book about the Bermuda Triangle, and some people have been supporting it ever since. However, there's some oddity associated with electronics. Astronauts of the International Space Station noticed the Earth's magnetic field is weakened in the Bermuda Triangle area. This field is a shield that protects us from solar radiation. Above the triangle, the particles of the sun's rays move faster than in any other part of the planet. This causes unstable work in the electronics of satellites flying in the atmosphere of Earth. It doesn't apply to ships and planes, though. There's also a theory that the Bermuda Triangle is the center of a magnetic anomaly causing navigation errors, but regular checks of the magnetic map of this region don't reveal any issues. You arrive at the place, the water is calm, and there's no coming storm in sight. You look at the compass and see the arrow moving from side to side. Oh no, it's begun! Panic rises within you, and you quickly turn the steering wheel of the ship to sail away from this place. Oh, stop. There has long been an explanation for the strange compass behavior in this area. The Bermuda Triangle is one of the rare places on the planet where true north and the magnetic one are in the exact same direction. True north is the geographic north pole of our planet. Magnetic north directs to the north magnetic pole, which constantly wanders around the Earth. Sometimes these poles coincide, and the straight line that connects north and south is called the agonic line. If you fall into this line, your compass will behave strangely. It won't point exactly to the north. Imagine that you're the captain of a ship sailing in the Bermuda Triangle at the beginning of the 20th century. You need to know where north is to get to the shore. You look at the compass and it points incorrectly. You're deviating from your original course and sailing in the wrong direction. There's the Caribbean Sea near the triangle, peppered with small islands. The sea floor here isn't deep. The ship can get in shallow waters, and now the ship is stuck on a shoal, and you have no idea where you are. If this were the 21st century, the ship's captain would be able to reach the shore using GPS and other modern navigation. But the most interesting thing is that the compass would work correctly this time, since the magnetic North Pole hasn't already coincided with the true one for a long time in the territory of the Bermuda Triangle. The agonic line is somewhere far away from here. There are no problems with navigation now, but for some reason, this is where ships disappear. In fact, not just here. Throughout the Atlantic Ocean, there are places where many more ships have gone. The Bermuda Triangle is not even in the top 10 of such places. One of the main reasons why many ships are lost here is that one of the most popular shipping routes in the Atlantic passes through the Bermuda Triangle. And the more ships in one place, the more shipwrecks. Simple probability. Other theories say there's a space-time rift in this region. Ships and planes fall into this rift and end up in the past or the future. But for some reason, there's not a single proof of this myth. There's no reason to think that the rift is hidden somewhere here. The base of an extraterrestrial civilization is located in the Bermuda Triangle. Visitors from other galaxies steal sea vessels along with the crew, so no one finds the wreckage of the ships. This is also a popular myth that has no scientific justification. Sunken ships are not found here, as there's one of the deepest trenches in the world. Any sinking ship will sink to a depth of about 19,000 feet. The enormous pressure and distance makes it difficult to find the ships. Also, the Puerto Rico Trench is nearby. In some spots, it's as deep as 27,500 feet. The Kraken lives somewhere in the triangle. It's a huge squid that sinks ships, and is also a legend that sailors tell each other. However, gigantic squids live in the depths of the ocean. They can grow to the size of half a train car, but no cases have been recorded where they have sunk a large vessel. And in the area of the Bermuda Triangle, they've never even been seen. People in the past didn't know about the existence of these creatures, so when they saw them for the first time, they described them as huge, terrible monsters. Giant squids are some of the most elusive creatures on Earth, and scientists had to use sonar equipment to find them. They don't like to leave the dark depths and are likely to be afraid of the sound of any ship. A more realistic hypothesis about the mystery of the Bermuda Triangle is methane. Large deposits of this gas can be found under the seafloor of this region. From there, methane is released into the water. It takes the form of huge bubbles that quickly rise to the surface. Then, the gas makes the water almost boil, creating waves that sink ships. The theory is quite realistic, but numerous studies still haven't confirmed the presence of an increased concentration of methane in the region. Last time this phenomenon occurred was 15,000 years ago. Another credible theory implies the appearance of rogue waves. Imagine a clear, calm sea without wind. Suddenly, you hear a loud hum. In just a few seconds, a huge wave, 100 feet tall, appears from the calm surface and falls on your ship. Some scientists believe rogue waves are created by a surface sea current colliding with a strong headwind. There's a version claiming the wave is born because of the collision of warm and cold currents. But the most interesting theory says the waves are formed by kinetic vampirism. Under certain natural conditions, waves can exchange kinetic energy. And among all the waves, there will be one, the vampire, that gets the energy of all the others. When it accumulates enough energy, the vampire wave spills it out. This explains the force of the impact and its sudden disappearance. This phenomenon is observed in all the waters of the world's oceans, but there's no evidence that it occurs most often in the Bermuda Triangle. If rogue waves appeared there, it was not during a calm. A restless sea is the main reason for ship disappearances in the Bermuda Triangle. Severe storms and hurricanes are a frequent thing there, because the Bermuda Islands is an area of high pressure that diverts thunderstorms towards the triangle. Huge waves simply overturn ships, and thunder and lightning flashes disable planes' electronics. There's nothing mysterious about this. Storms and ship disappearances occur in all oceans. But a lot of legends were made exactly about the Bermuda Triangle. It all started in the middle of the 20th century when a book was published that tells us that Atlantis lies in the waters of the triangle. No proof was given, but people liked this mysterious theory so much, they began to build upon it. They started making documentaries about it and writing new books. Each material devoted to the fantastic nature of the triangle was based not on facts, but the theories of other written books and films. And when a topic is popular, you can make money on it. Readers enjoy it, and authors are rewarded.
It's partly true. Nothing happens if you dip your pinky for a second into the red-hot lead. There is one condition. You need to dip it into the water first. The water between the skin and the metal will evaporate, creating a vapor layer, so it will repel metal for a second. Still, you don't want to perform this stunt. A sandwich before bedtime provokes the appearance of nightmares. Any late-night meal increases metabolism and body temperature. It activates the brain, which leads to not very sweet dreams. Boo! Just kidding. Mosquitoes bite some people more than others. The most delicious humans are those with type O blood. Also, these insects have excellent eyesight. They're attracted to green, black, and red, so before you go camping, check the color of your clothes. Birds are the only surviving dinosaurs. They evolved from theropods, the dinosaurs that ran on two legs. Yep, T-Rex is a distant relative of chickens, ostriches, and even hummingbirds. The phone is 10 times dirtier than a toilet handle. Also, beware of office desks, since they have hundreds of times more bacteria per square inch than office toilet seats. Ew. Ants can take over the world. Argentinian ants have built colonies in every part of the planet except Antarctica. Insects from different territories are on good terms and never have conflicts. Each human being is 99.9% empty space, kind of like my brain. Your body, like any other object in the universe, consists of atoms. At the center of the atoms, there's a super small nucleus. If you zoom the atom up to the size of a basketball, you still won't see the core. If it were possible to get all the empty space out of your body, you'd probably be as tiny as a grain of sand. A head of human hair can support from 5 to 8 tons. This weight won't damage individual strands, but the scalp can't withstand such pressure. Hypothetically, you can see the past, for example when you look into the starry sky. When the sun disappears, we see it only after 8 minutes. This is how long it takes for sunlight to reach the Earth. Glass is an amorphous substance, and it violates many laws of physics. It's solid, but if you look at it under a microscope, it looks liquid. In reality, it's neither liquid nor solid. It happens because the heat needed to produce glass changes the way molecules behave. It's like when you iron the clothes and fibers change because of high temperatures. Scientists from Japan played audio recordings for cats to prove they're truly dismissive. In those recordings, the owners of the cats called them by their names. Cats' pupils dilated, the animals moved their tails, legs, or ears. Sure, cats could hear human voices, but they rarely respond. It's all about evolution. Cats came to humans because they were attracted by mice that ate grains. They lived close to people, but were never tamed. Trees have their own underground internet. Mycelium filaments interconnect the roots of 90% of trees. Trees exchange information and nutrients through them. They warn each other about danger and fight parasites together. Trillions of microorganisms live inside you. Ooh! They make up 3% of your body weight and weigh up to 6 pounds. Microorganisms play a significant role. They help with digestion, absorb nutrients, and do many other things we never notice. In comparison with microorganisms, there are really few people on our planet. A teaspoon of soil contains more living organisms than there are humans on planet Earth. Go ahead, count them. Human brain capacity has a limit. Scientists estimate that your brain can store 2.5 million gigabytes of data. To use up all your limits, you need to upload a 300 years long high-quality video right into your memory. Go ahead, I'll wait. Since 1950, humanity has mined nearly 200,000 tons of gold. If we made a cube out of all this metal, it would be 70 feet high and wide. Recent data from scientists confirm that in the Earth's core, there are vast reserves of gold. The metal is enough to cover all the planet, and people might have gold up to their knees. The problem is, we can't mine it from there. Scientists used to believe 400 billion trees were growing on Earth, but there are over 3 trillion of them, or 420 trees per person. There are more trees on Earth than there are stars in the Milky Way galaxy. Wrangel Island was the last place where mammoths lived. These giant animals disappeared about 4,000 years ago. By this time, the Great Pyramid in Giza had been around for only 500 years. Archaeologists have found honeypots that are 3,000 years old in Egypt. They didn't spoil, and it turned out to be edible. It's possible because of the chemical composition of this product. Bacteria and insects that can spoil honey can't live in it. You're drinking the same water that dinosaurs drank. The water on our planet is the same as it was billions of years ago. Only a tiny portion of the liquid has evaporated. By the way, scientists still don't know exactly where the water came from. We have a detailed map of the Moon and Mars. Still, over 80% of the Earth's ocean is unmapped and unexplored. We can't study the oceans properly because of pressure, cold, and lack of light underneath billions of tons of water. The myth that you can't put hot food in the fridge is true. If you freeze some hot soup or roasted meat, the food might lose its nutritional value. You also risk breaking the refrigerator. Before freezing, it's best to wait for the temperature of the food to drop to room temperature. There's a biologically immortal creature on Earth, a transparent jellyfish called… I'll leave it on the screen. When it reaches maturity, it sinks to the bottom and turns into a polyp. From a polyp, the creature again turns into a jellyfish. The number of rebirths is unlimited. You can break a glass with your voice, but it's pretty hard. The volume of your scream must be at least 105 decibels, and it must last about 2 to 3 seconds. The jackhammer works at a volume of 90 decibels. Hey, I had a gym teacher once who was named Jack Hammer. Sailors from all over the world talked about the giant squid they met on their voyages. For many years, scientists considered monsters with long tentacles to be a myth. But in 2004, the first photo of a squid was taken. They exist. Scientists have registered an animal that has grown to 43 feet. Holy calamari! Flamingos are white. The bird turns pink due to beta-carotene. This pigment is found in the algae and the shrimp it feeds on. You can change your skin color too. If you eat a lot of carrots, your skin will turn slightly orange. This will happen because of the high beta-carotene content in the vegetable. Your nose and ears get bigger every year. This isn't due to an increase in size, but due to gravity. With age, the cartilage of the nose and ears weakens. Because of this, they sag and appear more prominent. The Kepler Space Telescope expedition confirmed that Earth isn't unique. Most likely, our world isn't the only place in the universe where there's life. The device, the size of a minibus, flew through space for 9 years. During this time, it confirmed the existence of 300 million potentially habitable planets. They have a solid surface, liquid water, and nearby stars that look like our Sun. All plants, fungi, animals, and humans evolved from a single microbe. Scientists called it LUCA, the last universal common ancestor. The microbe was discovered by comparing the genes of living beings and their descendants. LUCA lived 4.5 billion years ago. It lived in the craters of deep-sea volcanoes among hot lava and water. Hey, I think we should have a family reunion, don't you? Recent research has shown that Neanderthals could hibernate like bears. This is confirmed by the bones of ancient people from the Spanish cave Cima de los Huesos. Scientists have found signs of slow bone metabolism. It proves Neanderthals slept for months and did not leave the cave. The myth that closed eyes improve memory is true. When your eyes are closed, you don't need to memorize information visually, and the environment does not distract you. This frees up your brain energy and makes the memory more efficient. The acidity levels of the human gastric juice and the acid from the car battery are almost identical. Plastic and even metal will dissolve in your stomach. If we drop a metal plate the size of a penny into gastric juice, there will only be about 63% of it remaining within 24 hours. You can put a shark in a trance for 15 minutes. To do this, you need to stroke its nose with your hand. Yeah, you first. I'll watch from here, thanks. This sort of hypnosis is called tonic immobility, thanks to the receptors in the shark's nose. When stroked, the receptors send many signals, and the shark's brain cannot process them all. I know the feeling. Now, at some earlier stages of research, scientists reconstructed the Megalodon looking like a bigger, just a little more dangerous, version of a great white shark. Movies then followed suit, added a couple of details on their own, and ta-da! We've got a marine giant that could grow up to 90 feet long. Well, hold on. Megalodons were usually between 50 and 55 feet, sometimes growing up to 60 feet. For comparison, a bowling lane is 60 feet long, a school bus is around 45 feet, and an average person is 5 feet 10 inches tall. So yeah, not bad Megalodon, but still not 90 feet. Its weight was around 50 to 60 tons, which is something like 10 adult elephants or even a Boeing 737. That's just their females though. The ladies were almost twice as big as the males. Another movie versus reality thing. The Megalodon had nothing to do with a great white shark. The closest they could be is cousins, because Megalodon, in fact, is the last descendant of a completely different lineage of sharks. Plus, its kind is around 3 times bigger than an average great white. It has a shorter nose and a much flatter jaw that almost looks like it's squashed. Also, Meg's pectoral fins are longer than those of the great white sharks. Ancient predators ate a lot, so they needed something to support their weight. They both had an excellent sense of smell though, so even in prehistoric times, it wasn't a good idea to go swimming with a chunk of raw meat in hand. And it certainly isn't safe now. Whether the Meg's hiding somewhere in the depths, which some still believe is true, or it's gone forever, younger cousins will be there waiting. Also, both of them like to go after big marine mammals, so they would certainly have things to do together. That is, until the Meg got moody and accidentally ate its friend. You never know. These guys had a different hunting style. Great whites prefer to dive straight toward their prey and find the softest spots, like exposed legs or underbelly. Megalodon aimed for the fins and tail because of its almost 10-foot jaws and what's considered to be the strongest bite ever. Its teeth could pierce almost anything. Sometimes an entire tooth would be found embedded in the bone of some bigger animal, such as a whale. Without the main parts they use for swimming, poor sea animals were then helpless and unable to escape. Yet whales were just a smaller part of the Megalodon's diet. Seals, sea cows, squids, dolphins, other sharks, the good old Meg probably wouldn't say no to some random school of smaller fish swimming into its mouth either. Nothing better than a good snack after a big tasty dinner. Even those giant turtles weren't safe within their thick shells. The Meg probably took those as a dare challenge on a daily basis. Such a diverse diet, and in big amounts. Megalodon would eat about 2,500 pounds of food every day. No wonder it dominated the ocean. Almost 300 teeth in 5 rows, and we're talking about sharp chompers that could grow up to 7 inches long. Even its name stands for giant tooth. Hey, I'm thinking maybe it had a cousin, orthodontia, which means either crooked teeth or deep pockets. Still, Megalodon would change thousands of teeth over a lifetime. Since Meg's teeth weren't that strong, they would often fall out. Then it would get new ones within 1 to 2 days, so it could continue its hunting sessions without any serious interruptions. The same thing happens with modern sharks as well. New teeth replace damaged or worn-out ones. Those teeth falling out were the only thing that helped scientists do any research on the Megalodon at all. They found them all around the world. Yup, Megalodons were quite some travelers. They lived in all oceans, and their fossils were found on all continents except Antarctica. What, too cold? Since their skeletons were not made of bone but of cartilage, teeth are the only evidence they've ever even existed. They gave scientists an insight into a lot of things, including size. Even with modern sharks, scientists determine their size by the dimensions of only one tooth, and do the same with the Meg. Megalodon had the strongest bite of all living creatures on Earth. It would definitely be fun to see the clash between the Meg and, say, T-Rex. Sadly, they missed their chance to meet and establish some long-term friendship since dinosaurs went extinct over 60 million years ago. Meg, on the other hand, terrified all the inhabitants of the seas and oceans from 23 to 2.5 million years ago. Where could Megalodon live these days? Well, it would probably love the places modern sharks go to, such as Florida, Hawaii, Brazil, South Africa, or some other tropical paradise. When you think about it, it's not bad at all. Meg, take me with you! Meg itself didn't have any serious competition or a natural enemy, but its infants were too weak to defend themselves. That's why the apex predator had to choose warm, shallow waters with no strong currents to raise its babies. Those, by the way, were around 6.5 feet long, not quite tiny themselves. Scientists actually found some of their juveniles' teeth, so it seems like part of their nursery areas was the coast of Panama, and that's 10 million years old. Okay, time to meet with one of Megalodon's potential rivals, the mighty sperm whale. 45 to 60 feet long, the size sure makes it quite an adversary. Modern sperm whales don't have such big teeth, but their ancestors, which lived around 13 million years ago, were well packed. The largest tooth found was 5 inches wide and 14 inches long. That's something like the biggest soda bottle out there. That would make an interesting combat. Here, we're talking about this giant marine predator, but this is not the only intriguing ancient animal that wandered the oceans. In fact, sharks are some of the oldest creatures on our planet, more ancient than insects, mammals, dinosaurs, even trees. Mass extinction events wiped out most life on Earth. Giant asteroids fell on its surface, continents split up, and so many other things happened. But sharks were there, alive, persevering, apparently with no contact with the outside world, just chilling and doing their thing. The spiny shark was actually one of the first animals with a jaw. Not that it could do much with that jaw, since it was only around 12 inches long. Meg wouldn't even bother around this one, and it wasn't even a real shark, it just looked like one. If you ever wondered how a combination of eel and shark would look like, well, here it is. Eel shark preferred freshwater, was up to 3 feet long, and went extinct around 200 million years ago. Since dinosaurs appeared around 230 million years ago, the eel shark was probably there to give them warm welcome, prepare a buffet, but the dinosaurs had unfortunately mistaken it for dessert. Now, this predator would get some real screams on a nice sandy beach during a spring break if it was still alive – the Ginsu shark. It was nicknamed after Ginsu knives for a huge mouth of almost 500 razor-sharp teeth. One of this monster shark's hobbies was to go after big turtles. Okay, now seriously, what's with that shark turtle thing? Scissor-toothed sharks. Now we're talking. These guys lived around 300 million years ago and had some strangely shaped heads. The weirdest part were their jaws. This shark didn't shed old and worn-out teeth, but kept growing new ones at the back. Those in the front were then pushed forward, and with age, the shark got a really strange scissor-tooth look. Scientists are still unsure why it had to be like that. Hey, time to call in the orthodont. Even during the Meg's long reign, our favorite ancient predator still wasn't the only scary giant shark in town. For instance, I can't pronounce its name, so I'll just call it Mr. C. Unfortunately, not enough of its fossils were found to get more information, but some research says it had teeth more than 5 inches long. That also implies it could probably grow to be 20 feet long. Oh, and if it only left just a couple more teeth around, I guess the Meg wouldn't be the only movie star from those times. So close, C, so close.